Hello students and welcome back to Jules Math Tools. In our session today, we are going to be calculating angles on a straight line when we're working with a decimal number. And if you want to see how this is done, stay tuned. In our examples today, we will be calculating the measure of our unknown angle when we're using a decimal number. Now, when calculating your angles on a straight line, you still have to remember that your angle Q plus your 73.7 degrees should sum to 180 degrees. Now, in this question, we're going to be working with a whole number, which is 180 degrees, and our decimal number, which is 73 and 7/10, and we're going to be subtracting our 73 and 7/10 from 180 degrees. Now, with 180 degrees being a whole number, you must remember that the decimal point in every whole number is always behind the last digit. So I'm going to put my decimal point behind my 0. And when subtracting decimal numbers, remember that we do not line up the numbers. And I'm going to repeat that. We do not line up the numbers when we're subtracting with decimal numbers. We line up our decimal points. So I'm going to input my decimal point for my 73 and 7/10. And now I'm going to write in my 73 and 7/10. So see that my decimal points are lined up. My 3 is underneath the 0, my 7 is underneath the 8, and my 7 is behind the decimal point, just as it is in our number. Now, when subtracting or adding, remember that those blank spots above your number or below them, you can always fill them in with 0. And by adding the 0 will in no way change the value of my 180 degrees. Now that our numbers are set up, let's begin calculating. So 7 can't be subtracted from 0 since 0 is less than 7, which means that since my next number is 0, I will be borrowing from my 8. So my 8 will become 7, my first 0 will become 10. I'm going to borrow from that 10, making it 9, and changing my last 0 into 10. So 10 subtract 7 is equal to 3. 9 subtract 3 is equal to 6. 7 subtract 7 is equal to 0, and my 1 I will bring right down since it's not subtracting any number. And when subtracting, or after our subtraction rather, our decimal point will remain exactly where it is. So you must make sure that your numbers are lined up correctly so that when you bring your decimal point down, all of your numbers are in their correct position. So that will be our answer. So my angle Q will be equal to 106.3 degrees or 106 and 3/10. Let's try another example. Feel free at this point to pause the video, calculate the measure of your unknown angle, and then when you're ready, you can work along with me to see if I got the same answer that you got. Okay, so we're going to begin by writing our equation first, which is A plus my 136.8 degrees is equal to 180 degrees. And just like in our first example, we'll be subtracting my 136 and 8/10 from 180 degrees. So we'll write our 180 first, put in our decimal point behind the last digit. Now we're going to line up our decimal points and fill in my other numbers. So my 6 is underneath the 0, my 3 is underneath the 8, and my 1 will be underneath 1. And then I'm going to put my 8 behind the decimal point. And remember that we're going to fill in that blank space with a 0. So let's add our subtraction sign and begin calculating. So 0 can't subtract 8. We're going to borrow from my 8, making it 7, changing my first 0 into 10, borrowing from that 10, making it 9, and changing my last 0 into 10. So 10 subtract 8 will equal to 2, 9 subtract 6 is equal to 3, 7 subtract 3 is equal to 4, and 1 subtract 1 is equal to 0. And remember that our decimal point will come right down the center from where it is. So the measure of my angle A is equal to 43 2/10. Okay, so there you have it. We just calculated the measure of our unknown angle when we're using a decimal number. And remember that with your whole numbers, just add a decimal point behind the last digit, line up your decimal points, and subtract as usual. And once you're done subtracting, remember the decimal point does not move. You just bring it right down the center from where it is, and that would be your final answer. But the best way is always to practice, so make sure that you get some additional practice in. And until next time, this is Jules Math Tools, where math is made easy.